Yeah, let's get started. Can everyone hear me? So far, thank you so much and welcome to our first community event night. We are collaborating with Conquest Lending Centre, and I'm Lucinda, the Office Manager from All Seasons Property, and I work with the lovely talented team here from All Seasons Property. And yeah, we're really excited that you guys are here. Please bear with us, it's our pilot. And we probably have to iron out a few bugs, but so far so good. But we're very excited to bring some free information to help you with your property journey. And over the coming months, we've got lots of guest speakers booked in different areas of expertise. So without further ado, I won't hold you up for too long because I know your time's precious. A quick rundown of the night. We'll meet the presenters. We'll have All Seasons Property will be talking about the cost of buying and selling properties. Then Lee from Conquest Lending will talk about the financial costs. Then at the end we'll have a question and answer session. So if you've got any questions, just drop them down in the book and leave it to the end just so we can get through our little bits and then we can answer all your questions. So thank you so much for coming once again. Formally introducing Lee from Conquest Lending Centre. Jessie is the principal of All Seasons Property, and Anna is one of our lovely talented agents. So we will start with Jessie, and she's going to talk about the costs of selling your property.
Lovely, thanks for that, Lou. So some of you may have sold before, some of you may not have. And there's lots of questions that we get asked frequently as agents, where people don't know what certain things are. For example, commission. So us agents, we don't work for free, funnily enough, but we do work for free up until the point that you've sold your property, essentially. So commission is a lump sum of money that comes out at settlement. So once you've handed over the keys and you're going to be moving on to your next property, we get paid our commission as a percentage of the sale price. Different agencies will charge different commission rates, and that's up to you to investigate with whoever you're choosing as an agent with what commission rate they're going to charge. Marketing is obviously another really important part of selling your property. Needing to reach as many buyers as we possibly can and run a really effective marketing campaign to be able to capture those audiences from in their living rooms, looking on their phones, often on their computers, trying to get them to look at your property over all of the other properties that are on the market. And so it's really important that we run an effective marketing campaign. That does come at a cost, of course, too. Realestate.com, domain, photography, all your advertising brochures. There's a whole myriad of different tools that we use for marketing. Sometimes we throw in some of those a bit complimentary, but most of the time we do charge marketing expenses. So those expenses we try to keep to something realistic and affordable, but that's a really essential part of getting the best result for your property and maximising the number of buyers that we can capture to bring through. Those expenses, generally for an average house, you'd be looking at about $2,800 to $3,300, and that's including all your photography, floor plans, as I said, realestate.com, domain uploads, where we can really capture all of your audience. Legal expenses. So as part of the selling process, you will have a contract of sale prepared by a solicitor or conveyancer, and those costs generally tend to be around the $2,500. Depends on the complexity of the transaction as well, but when you're selling the property, you will have to have a contract of sale prepared by a solicitor or a conveyancer. And from here I'll pass over to Anna, who will talk about curb appeal and styling to sell your property.
Don't know, look at this. Curb appeal and stand up. Look at, sorry, I'm a teacher and I always hated it. So styling your property and curb appeal is super important when you're selling your house because it's the first impression the house is going to make on the buyer. So it's like getting dressed for your first date. You want to make the best impression. So that's for the inside and the outside of the house. And you can do that, where am I? Sorry. What that means is your house internally needs to be clean, it needs to be decluttered, it needs to look as high-end as possible, because that will bring in more money from the sale. Because people spend more when something looks more expensive. So that's why that is so important. And buying a house for people is an emotional decision, especially women, and women are the people that normally make the decisions to buy the house. So you want them to imagine themselves living there. You want them to feel like they can see where their furniture would go. So that's why when agents say you need to depersonalise the house, that's why. You want people to feel like they're already living there. So that means moving photographs, things off your furniture, photographs off the walls, that kind of thing. Now, if you can get a stylist in to zhuzh your house, and they can work with the furniture that's already in there. They'll move things, they'll make it feel as big and bright as possible, because that means you'll get more money. And that's really the end result of the whole game, is to get you as much money for your house as possible. Sometimes the stylist can come in and actually put furniture in there. So that means you don't have to have your whole house done, you can have your master bedroom, dining and living areas. It's usually for a minimum of 4 weeks, up to about 12, but that can be negotiated. And the cost approximately, don't quote me on this, but approximately is about $4,000 for that. And that is knickknacks, it shows people how the house could look. So if your house is empty or you think the furniture's really not up to it, you can get a stylist in, but obviously then you need to be living somewhere else. At the very least with that though, you should talk to your agent, because the agent should be able to help you style the place to look its absolute best. Externally, the gardens also need to look good, because that's the first thing people see when they come up to the house, is the exterior of the house and the gardens. So you want them to look as pristine as possible, with clear pathways, lawns mowed, hedges trimmed, because it's about making the house look easy to care for and easily maintained. If you need to get a landscaper in there, they're roughly between $60 and $80 an hour, and sometimes that can be money really well spent. So from an agent's perspective, it's about getting your house looking as good as possible so that we can get you the most money for your house. That's our job, and that's what we always try and do for our vendors.
So that's a little snippet of the selling process. Next we're going to talk about the buying process, and this is where we'll cross over to Lee after we've had this discussion, because she can fill in obviously the most important part of buying is being able to afford to buy it, having some money in your bank account to do so. So when you're buying a property, there's certainly some things to be aware of and to take into consideration, and they are expenses as well. So a building and pest inspection report, normally most solicitors will recommend it even if it's a newer type of house. You just need to be aware if there's anything that's any damage to the property, whether it's had any termite, any water damage, anything that's urgently repairable, so that you can factor that into your cost considerations when you're negotiating with the agent that you're purchasing from. That's a really important part of the process. Having a deposit. So deposits are what we receive as the agents to hold the property with the contract of sale as well. So the contract is done with the solicitor, but the deposit is transferred into the agency trust account. Deposits generally are 10 or 5%. Some solicitors will insist on a 10% deposit, which means you'll have to have 10% of your purchase price. If you're purchasing an $800,000 property, you're looking at an $80,000 deposit that's going to be held on that property until settlement. Now those deposits are non-refundable once you have exchanged the contracts, but up until the point of exchange it will just sit in the agency's trust account, and if for some reason you have to get the building pest inspection report through and there's something drastically wrong with the house, you're not going to touch that. That up until the point that you've actually put pen to paper, instructed the solicitors or conveyancers to exchange, that money we can get back. So really important to make sure that you're comfortable and confident with your purchase before you put pen to paper. Once you put pen to paper, that's really done and dusted. Stamp duty, so this is where the government puts their hands in their pockets and says, thank you, I'll take a bit of that. So every single property you purchase will be subject to stamp duty. On the Conquest website, she's got a fabulous stamp duty calculator, so it takes the guesswork out of it. It is a percentage charged by the government for a property purchase, and it's based on the property purchase price. So if you're purchasing land, generally your land's going to be cheaper than buying a house and with land on it, or land with a house on it, and so your stamp duty will be cheaper, and so you're going to be able to spend a bit more on actually building the property that you'd like. Legal fees. So again, whether you're buying or you're selling, the conveyancers and solicitors will have legal costs involved with that. Again, it's generally around the $2,000 to $2,500, depending on the complexity of the purchase. But that's a necessary expense. And then don't forget that you need to move everything that you own. And so that includes getting your boxes or your packaging, your bubble wrap, your butcher's paper. If you want to hire a truck or a trailer, if you want to get a professional to do it, there's so many different ways that you can move house, of course, but just don't forget to factor that in as an expense when you're doing all your calculations of what you can actually afford to buy and where your budgets all sit. So now I will just pass over to Lee, and she can talk about how she can get you that money that you need to buy the properties.
And this is our trial pilot, but we're hoping that this will continue the first Tuesday of every month through to the end of the year. As Lucinda said, we've got lots of guest speakers coming that all talk about different topics. So I'm going to talk about the finance, because that's my jam. Now, finance can get a little overwhelming, and let's face it, a little boring. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and unless you're like me and love people and love numbers, then, you know, sometimes you can just doze off. So I'm going to start with just one thing to get out of the way, and it's a common question that's always asked to me, is there a fee for your services? How do you get paid? So bottom line is, with almost all of the loans that we do, the lender pays us a commission, which is a percentage of your home loan. So you don't pay anything. You get our services, basically, at no cost to you. So if you compare that to most other services of a professional, that's a pretty good win for you. Now, what we do is we've got 30, 40 lenders on our panel. Each of them have got different policies, different things. So each individual, once we have a chat to you all, we can find out what's going to be a good fit for you. And we usually present about 3 lenders. We'll go through the pros and cons, and then we pick out one, and then we go through the process of submitting an application. So that's how we get paid. Now that payment covers our admin costs, our industry licenses, a lot of fees. So we work hard for that. There's a lot of work in putting an application together, but if we do it right, then we only have to do it once. If for some reason that application, something comes out of the woodwork and we're not sure of, we then have, because we do have a panel of lenders, we then usually have another lender that we can go to. So we always have that plan B up our sleeve. So let's get on to a little fun quiz just to start with. Now, what's the first thing you need to do before applying for a home loan in Australia? Now, it's multiple choice, so not too hard. A, move into a tent to test if you really need a home. B, check your credit score and make sure it's better than a kangaroo's hop. C, pray to the mortgage gods for a good investment rate. Or D, write a heartfelt letter to the bank begging for money. Okay, now all those could or probably not help you much. Correct answer is check your credit score, making sure that it's a decent credit score. So most people aren't that aware of what your credit score is. The credit score is a system that is in Australia. It's pretty well global, but Australia have really upped their game on it recently. So anything that you do, you're borrowing money, you've got credit cards, you've got your Optus phone card, anything like that is now going onto a credit report. So you've got this little report about you and how good you pay things off. So if you've got a good score, which the score's out of 1200, then the lenders are going to say, hey, they've got financial discipline. I think they're good to go. If you've got a low score, the lenders are going to say, hey, a bit of a risk. We might put a higher interest rate or higher fees on that. Or we might say, get it in order, get your ducks in a row. You'll hear me say that all the time, by the way. And then they'll say, come back in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. And that's what we do. We work with you to make sure, before we put in that application, that you are in the best position to get your loan approved first go. Okay? So credit reports are very, very important. We'll do a soft touch. We'll just have a view to see if there's any hidden things there that we don't want to see or that the lender doesn't want to see, and we'll address them before we do an application for you. We will be doing a full session on that in coming months, so keep an eye out for that, where we'll go deep dive into what credit reports are and how to make sure you've got a good one. The next thing we're going to talk about is your deposit, because as Jess said, need a deposit. We've got different ways of doing deposits though, so it's not just about saving your cash, living like on 2-minute noodles, and just saving for 2 years until you can get that deposit. There's lots of different ways we can do it, and first-time buyers and some people that haven't even owned a house in 10 years, sometimes they can qualify for some grants and schemes. So there's different ways we can do it. If you are buying, you might be upsizing or downsizing, and you don't have that 5 or 10% deposit in your bank account, but you've got it tied up in the equity of your house. So you want to sell your house and buy another, but you don't have that 80,000 sitting in cash to pay your deposit. We've got another option there of a guarantee called a deposit bond. Now that's where we can see that you've got the money, you're going to sell your house, we can see that you're going to have it at settlement, but we just have this guarantee certificate called a deposit bond that we use for the exchange. Again, we've got a guest speaker coming in May session? Yeah, but we'll have a lot more information about those coming up too. Here's our next quiz. What's the most likely outcome if you don't have a deposit saved up? A, the bank will send you a free koala as emotional support. Who doesn't like a koala? B, you'll end up buying a cardboard box on eBay. C, the bank will look at you with a confused expression and say, what's this, amateur hour? Or D, you'll need to get creative with your borrowed deposit from relatives. Thanks, Mum and Dad. Now we know Mum and Dad Bank is getting more and more popular as it's getting harder, but let's talk a bit more about the deposits. So most lenders are going to need around 5% minimum of what the purchase price is, plus the purchase cost, which Jess just spoke about, which is your legals, your government, your lender, bank fees. Now we estimate them to be about 4,000 to 5,000. So if you think about your savings, if you've got 15,000, think about 5,000 of that is going to go towards your purchase costs, and the other 10 is what you're going to use towards your deposit. So just keep that in mind, it's a good rule of thumb. The higher the deposit you have, so if you're getting up into the 10 or 20% deposit, the lower your interest rate's going to be. So predominantly, if you've got a small deposit, like your 5%, your interest rate of your loan and your loan fees are usually a little bit higher. Now you can include into your deposit, as long as we can see that you've been saving a little bit yourself, gifts from family. So sometimes it might make up part of it from your savings, and then a gift from mum, dad, brother, sister, somebody else. The other way that we can do deposits on our end is a guarantor, which is usually a family member, usually a parent, and they might have a property and they've got equity in that property. And again, we'll talk a bit more about that later, or come and talk to me individually about that. So, moving forward, different ways to buy a home. So you might be a first home buyer and you want to move into your own home because, let's face it, living with mum and dad's getting a little bit cramped, want a bit of personal space. So that's where we get started with first homeowner grants and schemes to see what we can achieve there. Stamp duty is exempt for, in New South Wales, for applicants if their purchase price is under 800,000, and thankfully there's a few coming up in the Highlands now under that magic 800,000 mark. Then it's tiered, so you'll pay a proportion of it between 800,000 and 1 mil. So again, you may not need to pay that full stamp duty cost. The other option that you have, and we're starting to see a bit more as purchase prices get a little bit out of reach for first home buyers, is property share. So what this means is 2 or 4 people, or 2 up to 4 people, they can purchase a house together, but they each have their own separate loans. So as an example, if they're buying an $800,000 property, they each may have a $400,000 loan, where they each individually just qualify for that $400,000 loan. They don't need to have equal deposits. They don't need to purchase a house equally. It could be one has a lot of deposit, maybe from an inheritance, and the other one hasn't got very much, but they might have been renting. So this is a cheaper way. It often works out their repayments are cheaper than what they've been paying in rent. So we've done a few of these. Example we had a nurse and a teacher that have been renting for quite some time, and we got them these 2 separate loans, and their repayments were cheaper than what they were paying in rent, and a better house. Plus they're building up the value of their own house, they're building up, and in owning their own house rather than paying somebody else's mortgage off. Another way that you can purchase a house rather than just living in it yourself, you might be working in one location and you want to get into the property market but can't afford something in your own area or where you work. You might be living in Sydney and can't afford there. And we call that rent vesting. Again, there'll be further topics on this. So it might be that you're living with parents with, little or no rent to pay, and you invest in a location where you can afford a loan and you've got a deposit that can actually meet that. So the tenant rent is then adding to your income, which then means that you can service the loan. So the property generally increases in value, and that can assist further for purchasing your own home further down the track. I did talk about some government schemes and grants. So there's, if you're building, there's a first homeowner grant for that. The stamp duty exemption we've covered. Now the other one that's popular at the moment is, we call it an LMI waiver. So LMI is the lender's mortgage insurance. So when you have less than 20% deposit, the lenders decide that you're a little bit more risk of defaulting on this loan. So they whack an insurance there to cover them, but you pay the premium. That premium gets added to your loan, and then you're paying interest on that. Now at the moment, the government has got some spaces available for first home buyers, or if you've not owned a property within the last 10 years, to have that mortgage insurance waived. They actually will cover that cost. So that brings down a little bit of your repayment, but the magic of that is that the lenders are then offering you an interest rate as if you've got a 20% deposit. So that's the magic with that you're getting a lower interest rate loan, which is going to make it a bit easier on your, come up for that monthly repayment. Next, I just want to go through just a little bit of repay this loan. They also want to see that you can save. So I always suggest to my clients that if you're looking at borrowing, find out what you're comfortable with the repayment. That payment goes into a savings account, that you're not going to be touching it. If you need to fix your car or something like that. Once you made that loan repayment, you can't get that back until you sell a house. So get into that habit, get comfortable with putting the same amount away each week, each month, and using that as a trial run of making a home loan repayment. That's going to add to your deposit anyway, so it's a good way of testing it out and just seeing what you're comfortable with. So sometimes you might not, you might start off with $200 a week, and then you find that that's good, so then increase it to say 250. Serviceability is what the lenders are going to look at to see if you have got sufficient income, what debts you're paying back, and what's your lifestyle expenses like. Now, we all hear in the media who talk about your avo on toast, and this is where I start with my clients. We start looking at what's in your bank statements, what's your lifestyle like, and is there any ways that we can trim it down a little bit to make it a little bit more help your serviceability as well. Lenders are also going to look at your previous financial conduct and your financial discipline. So they want to see that whatever debts that you've had already, that you've been able to make those repayments on time, not overdrawing your bank balances, and that's again another thing that we want to get our ducks in a row to get that tidied up before we do an application. The process for putting in a home loan application, a lot of work that we do beforehand. We work with you to make sure that you're in the best position to put that application in. We just get some documents from you, we have a few conversations, we put all of that together, and then we'll usually drill it down to about 3 different lenders, and we'll go through the pros and cons of each of those, and then we put together an application. Now, as Jess will tell you, agents love pre-approvals because they know that we've already done the hard yards, and it's not going to take another 1 or 2 weeks to get all our ducks in a row. So we try to do that, especially if you're on the hunt for a house. You want to have that pre-approval ready to go. Once you've got that pre-approval, all we need to do is get a valuation done on the property by an independent valuer assigned by the bank, and then it's usually smooth sailing. It's very, very quick process. If you don't have that pre-approval, what happens is that somebody else is likely to come and buy that property before you've got your ducks in a row. So once you have found that property, we get that valuation, we may need some updated pay slips or bank statements. We send it back to the assessor, and the assessor is a real person, it's not a computer, who checks through your application and just checking that that meets the lender's policy and criteria. And then the magic word is when we get the phone call to say that we've got unconditional approval, or full approval, that's the magic. We give you the, hey, great news, then we let your solicitor know or conveyancer know, and then it's up to you to let the agent know. The exchange at that point, then you are safe to talk to your solicitor, pay a deposit, and then exchange those contracts. And it's usually about 4 to 6 weeks later that you get the keys and that your home loan starts, about a month later. So we'll walk you through all that process. In between, we hold your hand. I'm available out of office hours. I usually work between 8 in the morning to 8 at night, very flexible, because when you've got a question, you probably want that answered fairly quickly, and it's when you're at work, it's not when you want to be having a 15-minute conversation with me about what you need to do next. So a little bit further, more information, we'll probably talk in Q&A, question and answers, but feel free, call me, talk to me, happy to help. I'd rather everyone be far more informed about the process and confident when you're taking on a pretty big purchase, probably the biggest purchase you're going to make for a while. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. As always very informative. Every time, I was saying to someone earlier before, every time we've met with Lee leading up to these events, we learn something, don't we? And I've bought and sold quite a few times, so yeah, never too old to learn. So hopefully you have some questions for us. Don't be shy. But I thought to get us started, I've got one for you, Lee.
Oh God, oh God.
Are interest rates going to go down?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? A lot of commentary at the moment around possibility on the 18th of February, the next RBA meeting, that there could be a rate drop then. We do have an election coming up, and quite often that could be an influence as well. So, fingers crossed, I have a big mortgage as well, so I'm hoping they go down, and I'm sure we'll all get busy if they do. But yes, that's it. Yeah, 18th of February, the next one after that's the 1st of April. So let's see what happens. Sorry, I can't give you a definite answer on that until the 18th of February.
Lovely. Does anyone else have a question? Or I've got a few more if you want to sort of warm up a little bit. Silence.
Kate's got one for Lee, that's okay, please. I'm just wondering what is required in terms of getting a loan if you are self-employed or own a business?
Great question. Different lenders have different policies on what they require. Traditionally, they used to need 2 years tax returns, and then they would look at your net profit rather than your gross profit, because let's face it, you could be on 6-figure income, but if your expenses are the same, we're looking at the net profit. And, you know, accountants love to get that number down so it saves you tax. Lenders don't. Okay, lenders want to see what money is left over at the end of it, whether it's in directors' wages or your net profit at the end. That's what we want to look at. Now, we do have some other lenders that are looking at 1 year's financials, and then we can go even further, that some lenders will just use 2 BAS statements and maybe a bank statement, maybe a letter from an accountant to back it up. Now, just keep in mind they are going to be usually a little bit higher interest rate, but the plus with that is it actually gets you into the market. And if you're paying rent, you know, sometimes that little bit higher interest rate and those fees are worth it to get off that rent cycle and get you into the property market. And then in 12 months' time, we'll look at, you know, possibly refinancing to a more of a mainstream lender. Does that help?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Any further questions? No, I've got one for Jessie. Keep on your toes. How and when do you put an offer in on a property?
I get it. Don't delay is probably one of the biggest things. You don't know how many other buyers are out there looking at the same property as you, that falling in love with the same properties that you're looking at. As Lee said, have your ducks in a row. If you have all your ducks in a row, speak now and forever hold your peace. You're going to miss out on that property. Pre-approval, as Lee said. Yes, don't delay. You can always start lower, which everyone always does. We expect that, and build your way up. You don't know the vendor circumstances as to why they're selling as well. And so definitely speak up and have open, honest conversations with your agents that you're purchasing from. But yes, really don't hesitate. It'll be too late.
Ask a follow-up question there. As an agent, do you, or are you at liberty to tell the potential purchaser why it's being sold?
I do. I pride myself on my honesty and my integrity, and I do give, for the most part, the reason for sale. And sometimes you don't need to know all the ins and outs, and I won't disclose all the unnecessary information. But yeah, look, that's a good question to ask an agent as to when you as part of that negotiation process is, why is this vendor selling the property? Is it a deceased estate? Is it that they're wanting to upsize, downsize? Are they really wanting the quick sale? All those sorts of questions can empower you when you're negotiating and to try to get the best result for yourselves as well.
Thank you. One for Anna. When you're selling your property and you're talking about styling, do you advise to depersonalise?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, we want the buyers coming through the property to feel like they can see themselves living there. So if you've got photographs or kids' toys and all sorts of things like that lying around, it's very much your home, and buyers won't feel that it looks like what they would do with the place. So to clear it, declutter it, and depersonalise it, you're giving them a blank canvas. And that's what buyers want. Then they can become emotionally attached to it and imagine where they would put their furniture in the property.
I may just add quickly to that as well. Part of the decluttering process is also going to make life a lot easier on the other end when you're actually moving house. So if you've gotten rid of all the things that you're not going to plan to take to the next property, you're not going to be spending half the time unpacking things and that you don't actually need. And it's easy to store them in the garage as well. Don't think that buyers are going to judge the appearance of your garage. Yes, have it stacked to the ceiling with boxes, put bigger pieces of furniture away to take away from the busyness of a room, even though obviously it's very comfortable the way that you were living with that furniture. Sometimes we like to open those spaces up a little bit more to show the true size of the room, and so that buyers can picture what furniture they can potentially use and not get distracted by big chunkier pieces of furniture.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that wardrobes should be cleared out as well. So you can still have some clothes in there, but don't have them overstuffed like mine. You know, so people can see how big it is. Same with your pot cupboards and things. If you've got them. Yes,
I was thinking about how, as buyers, what's a good way to come up with prices to offer? So obviously there's probably guide prices, there's probably some online information. Have you got other ways that we could come up with?
Well, when
I never really believe what a real estate agent says about that.
Absolutely, and that's fair enough. We are quite a tainted industry, unfortunately, but certainly when I'm researching the property to buy a property, I like to put it in your realestate.com domain. They've got your price bracket searches, so that'll help give you an indication of where, if it's on for a contact agent, for example, and the agent hasn't got back to you yet for some reason to tell you what the property price is going to be in the back end, all the agents do have to legally put in the price range where that property's been appraised at and where they're expecting it to sell. And so you do need to, it's a lot easier to refine your search in your search engine already. So on realestate.com, it's just got the price range. You can put your maximum price range, and that'll filter out all the properties that aren't going to be in your budget anyway. And that'll also help to show other properties that you may not have seen, as there's a lot of properties on the market in the Highlands at the moment. You may not have seen certain other properties, and you can go, oh, well, that property's on at X amount, this one at 750, this one's been marketed at 800, do I feel that this one's better? Like you've got a pretty good gauge of where you see value in a property and different locations. The other option is that if it's all too daunting and overwhelming, you can engage a buyer's agent. So a buyer's agent, we will have another session on buyer's agents specifically, but a buyer's agent is employed by yourself. So instead of I work with the seller, they will work for you. They'll go out and do all the legwork, they'll give you you'll have a criteria of what you're looking for, you must have in the property, and you give that to a buyer's agent. They'll go and do all the legwork. They'll get access to off-market properties as well. So not every property does go to market for various reasons. And so working with the buyer's agent can be another option to get exactly what you're looking for in the right price range as well.
Lovely. Does anyone else have a question before I have another one? So something we get asked a lot is when looking for a property, pre-approval first or look for a property first?
Well, I always suggest get the pre-approval, because how can you go looking for a property if you don't know how much you can borrow? So I think getting, again, ducks in a row, finding out how much you can actually borrow, finding out that borrowing capacity, and a lot of it will, be a little bit flexible. You do have most pre-approvals last for 90 days, and then if you haven't found a property in that 90 days, then we can usually extend it just with supplying some updated payslips. So, best case is that we've got 6 months, but we find that most people, once we've got that pre-approval, they're already starting to look in that range anyway. We've already given them an idea of what their borrowing capacity is before we submit, so then they'll start looking. And I very rarely have a pre-approval expire without them finding something. I'll let you add.
So in terms of your negotiating power as well, if you're bidding against another buyer, not necessarily in an auction condition either, that you've got another buyer that's interested in the same property as you, and they don't have pre-approval, and you do, or vice versa, that person with the buyer, the pre-approval is going to have a much stronger possibility of securing the property. In terms of even the vendor's consideration of your offer, so if I have two buyers that I've submitted two offers, one might be at $830,000, one might be at $840,000. The $830,000 has pre-approval, but that's their max budget that they're prepared to spend for that property. But $840,000 doesn't have their ducks in a row. The vendor may well consider and accept the lower offer simply because there's far less risk involved for them as a vendor to accept that offer.
Lovely. One last question. Do you need a pest and building report?
From the loan perspective, no. Very rarely would we have a lender ask for a pest and building. I think in 15 years I've had two. So no, but it will give you peace of mind, confidence. I'll let Jess finish, but we don't organise them. We don't have anything to do with them other than we suggest that they're a good idea.
Further to that, yes, your solicitors most likely, as I mentioned before, they most likely will require you to have one, well not require, but strongly recommends that you have one. The expense of those, they vary depending on the size of the property and locations that can come into play as well. Generally they're around $600 to $800, and it's really money well spent. You don't want to go and commit to a property without having done that. You've spent $800,000 on a property and then you find that it's riddled with termites and then the house is quite uninhabitable and all sorts of mould, all sorts of things are really things that you should be putting high on your priority list when you're seeing whether this is really a worthwhile spend figure. It's a lot of money that you're outlaying and you don't want to be caught up with something that's going to be a headache at the end.
I just will add a little bit to there. With the home loan, you do need to insure it. It's a requirement of your home loan. You do need to insure it. If you've already got your pest and building, you're going to have a lot of detail about the property to arrange your insurance. So it will give you, I had an example of somebody buying down in the Victorian border and they thought the house was on a slab, got the pest and building done and it turned out it was on piers. So a few little areas there that having that pest and building report is going to just give you more information, and being more informed is what it's all about.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah.
Council approvals. So you have a house, you've got an addition or something like that that's not council approved, but it's houses, building and pest. Is that, is there a condition that would hold up the sale for that, or is it an agreement between the vendor and the purchaser?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So if you are a homeowner, I would strongly recommend getting anything that you've done council approved. However, you can still sell your property without the approval. It's at the buyer's discretion whether they're going to take that risk on, essentially. If it's, for example, a deck extension that's more than the square metres that's required, that you should be definitely, the agent, if they're a good agent, they will be asking these questions as part of the selling process as they're preparing your house for sale, is if certain things have been approved or not. And just be aware that that can sometimes scare off a perfect buyer, or also detract from the value of your property as well, because they will take that into consideration if they do want to get those improvements approved, that does come at a cost. So just be aware, but it's not always going to be a deal breaker. Obviously, it's going to depend on what type of non-approved structure or improvement that you've done in the property, whether the buyer is going to want to take that risk.
I'll just jump in on the flip side of that, is if you are getting finance to add those extensions or do those renovations, that it is, the lenders mostly will, if they're major renovations, they will want those council approved plans. If it's a smaller amount, say up to 50,000, you might have just got some extra cash out of your equity, and you might not have had to go through the lender requirements to get that council approval, but it could come back to bite you later on when you go to sell. So we suggest that, just follow the due diligence and do it the correct way.
Could cost you more later.
Especially with our council.
No further questions? No? Did you guys want to add anything?
Any suggestions for topics that you'd like covered in more detail? We've got quite a few sort of lined up with our guest speakers, but happy to take suggestions as well. So next month, 4th of March, we've got our guest speaker is Yasmin from Our Lawyers, talking about all things about conveyancing and purchasing and selling. Should we even touch on wills in the States? Possibly, yeah. The next month we've got Sarah from ING Direct Bank coming. She's going to talk about the property share and all things banking. She's been with ING for an awfully long time, loves Barrel, comes up here every month. So she's going to come and talk to us about how a property share, how two people can buy a property, might not be related. They could be two tradies wanting to flip homes and they just buy a house together. Could be even 3 or 4 of them buying it together. So how you can actually get into the property market when not just doing it on your own or as a couple. She's talking about that. And then in May we've got Bella coming from Deposit Assured, that's going to talk about deposit bonds. And then I think the next month we've got buyer's agents, talk about that, and the psychology of buying and selling. And I think we've got a few others sort of coming up. Yeah, in the pipeline. So didn't want to book people, 6 months in advance, but that's what we're working on over the next few months.
Lovely, so we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we can get early now. But I just thought I'd mention that we are recording this, and if there's anything you want to access again or maybe pass on to other people that may be interested, we're hoping to upload it to our YouTube channel in a couple of days, which is All Citizens Property, and it's under our social handles on the last page. But yeah, no further questions, and please, before you leave, come and have a chat to any of us. We're friendly and happy to answer lots more questions. Please also help yourself to the food. There's way too much left over there. And thanks again for coming out. And we know.